Again, my name is Michele Mueller, and I'm the local group lead here in Cincinnati for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Again, and like Bill said, we have Lauren Rose representing Students Demand Action, students that have taken action immediately after Parkland. Although I gotta say, I have a feeling Lauren has been an activist a great deal of her life in other issues. And we also have Judith Robinson here from our local team. Judith is one of our legislative leads. We have in our leadership team legislative leads, event leads, digital leads, outreach leads, faith outreach leads. So there's a whole group of us. I certainly don't do this on my own. It takes the whole team, and then we're a few of about 4.7 million supporters of Moms Demand Action. So, but thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Thank you, Christ, the Church Cathedral, and Bill Woods and the committee for putting this together. I actually joined Moms Demand Action. The organization is 5 years old, and it was born the day after Sandy Hook mass shooting. That was in December of 2012. I think the mass shooting was on the 14th of December. Shannon Watts, is our founder, started the organization online on a Facebook page. Not knowing she was starting an organization, but just creating a Facebook page to express grief and outrage of what had happened at Sandy Hook, the horrific mass shooting, losing 20 children and 6 educators. They were literally mutilated and murdered in their school. And I didn't see Moms Demand Action until, or that Facebook page, until a few months later. And when I saw it, I realized and read some of the, the postings and comments that, this was a group that was forming. It had already formed by then. That was a gun violence prevention group. So we actually don't use the word gun control group because we're not really out to control the gun. Our concern is most of the time, 99.9% of the time, not the gun, but the person behind the gun. So we're all about preventing gun violence. But we are concerned about one gun, and that's the assault weapon, okay, and the high-capacity magazines, and we do oppose that. So I can no longer say that it's never about the gun. But it is not about taking away someone's gun, because we also support the Second Amendment. So when I saw this come up on my Facebook page, I realized that this was a platform that could help me elevate my voice, to do something. It was a platform that offered a range of activities and actions that we could take and get involved and elevate our voice. But it really came down to my granddaughter. We have 3 grandchildren, and it was shortly after Sandy Hook, and our 8-year-old granddaughter said to us that a few weeks after Sandy Hook, she was frightened to go back to school. It was going into the Christmas time, and Christmas break was coming, but they were having trouble getting her to want to go back into school. So she really literally said to us, were they having a war in that school? She said, Grandma, was that, because they were shooting all the children, was that a war? And I'm worried there's going to be a war in my school. And when I realized, my husband and I realized that that poor innocent child had processed that mass shooting, because she couldn't even process what really happened, literally. But she envisioned in her mind that had to be a war, to be that bad. The worst thing in the world to her was a war and killing all the people. And so I knew if she wasn't the only little child that was afraid to go back to school, that there had to be thousands of others. And at that time, many people were rising up. Parents had to be concerned, and we heard their voices. They were afraid to send their children to school. So that's sort of how I got involved. And then what happened is our chapter was started. Shannon Watts was the founder. Very quickly, it was an online movement that became an offline movement, grassroots, boots on the ground, because she couldn't find one. She couldn't find a gun violence prevention organization that had boots on the ground, that could carry out the activity that was going to be needed to either oppose or support good gun legislation. So she flew into every state and initiated every one of the states very quickly. And it was mom-centric because it was started by a mom. She is a mom, lived in Indiana at that time, a mother of 5 children. And it was sort of fueled by moms across the nation, and you can see here, moms were raising their hands state by state by state, I want to start a Moms Demand Action chapter. And so she flew into Ohio, and on February 23rd, had a big rally with Mayor Coleman at that time. Moms members, new members that had signed up, we all went to Columbus, and she initiated our chapter that day. This is actually a photo of our very first leadership team. The girl Jane that's in a wheelchair, she started the chapter. She's from Cleveland. She's still a very active member, and she was our first chapter leader. And then she passed that on to me, and I was a chapter leader for Ohio for 3.5 years, and then stepped back 1.5 years ago, and I'm the local group lead in Cincinnati. But we have leadership all over every state, and multiple local groups in every state. And then this is also Karen Hillis Skipper. She was the very first one in Cincinnati to have the title. We were creating leadership roles. We only had 2 leaders in the chapter, or 3 when it first started, a chapter lead, a communication lead, an events lead, and then we had these ambassadors. We knew that we had to take the message out. How are we going to get this message all over, first of all, the state, let alone, we had to get Cincinnati, and we had to spread the word in Columbus, where we had these local groups. And it was very difficult. I kept saying, well, how do we do this? Where do we take it? So, of course, Karen took it right down to Fountain Square, and with a microphone, and just taking our message to anyone that would listen, who we were, what we were doing, fighting dangerous gun legislation, and we were going to go toe-to-toe with the NRA. And we started out having even lemonade stands to get our message out. Moms were just setting them up in their yards or on the street corners or in parking lots or wherever with information about Moms Demand Action. So that's kind of where we are. Now we've become very digital. Not that we won't do a lemonade stand, because we'll talk to anybody, anywhere, anyhow, that'll listen to us. So we do tabling events to this day. So that's a little bit of our history. And again, we're all about just plain and simple saving lives. We save lives by demanding stronger laws that stop dangerous people from getting guns, like felons and domestic abusers, anyone with a dangerous history. And we want to keep kids out of harm's way by educating our neighbors and our family about the responsible ways to store guns at home. That's our Be Smart Gun Safety Program, and I have some information over there on the table. And then we build safer communities. That's our goal. Fighting, again, for reasonable limits on where, when, and how guns are carried in public and by whom. So that's our corporate campaign, where we literally petition companies and ask them to prohibit the open carry of gun in their stores, where we take our family and our children. And they have the power to be able to establish their own safe gun policies and go above and beyond state laws that maybe inefficiently protect us. So we have stores put up and post those signs on their businesses, either no firearms or no open carry. So really, we just want to create a safer future for our families, and by arguing for new policies that cut down on gun violence. So again, we want to save lives from gun violence any way we can, through any type of legislation or gun safety policies, but we do this using research. We are an evidence-based organization, and all of our research and our studies are on everytown.org/learn. You can find everything there. So our policy experts and our attorneys and law experts in gun laws, they develop the strategy. They look and do all the studies, whether it's from Harvard, our own, Stanford, you name it. They'll look across the nation at all the studies, and they determine what actions need to be taken, what laws need to be implemented that absolutely have been proven to show a decrease in gun violence. And if it doesn't, then we're not going to advocate for it. So they develop the strategy and all the suggested tactics. They hand that down to us, our mission, if we so choose to take that mission, and we do every time. And that is, we have some leeway what tactics, but we carry out those campaigns on the ground. So again, this is who we are. We are nonpartisan grassroots movement. Again, mom-centric in the beginning, fueled by moms across the nation, but now moms and dads and non-parents and singles and children and students demand action, and survivors and mayors. So we are mothers and others now, and we are modeled after Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They advocated for safer drinking and driving laws, and they were able to achieve that over a 14-year period, and they were able to cut down drinking and driving deaths by 50%. So we know their model worked, and they did it without taking away one drop of alcohol. So Shannon Watts went to them in the beginning to look at their model, and that's who we're modeled after. But we respect the Second Amendment. We believe that that you have that right. It's in our Constitution. You can have that right, but with rights come responsibilities. And we don't believe advocating for safer communities and protecting people are mutually exclusive. And here's our 4 goals. And that number 1 goal that they found that has the greatest impact on decreasing gun violence and keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous people with dangerous history is background checks. And that's background checks on all sales. And I have a little handout over there. We were able, and it kind of shows you highlights here. It's on the table. We have about 20 states now that have implemented their own comprehensive background check. That's background checks on all gun sales at the private level, or private sales, which would be from unlicensed dealers, private sales, individual to individual, online sales, gun shows. We want every gun to have a background check, not just from licensed dealers that's required by federal law. And we know that it works because it stopped about almost 3 million prohibited buyers since the Brady bill was implemented, or the National Instant Check System was implemented.